Hi everyone, I'm Sean Keeling from EasyEquities, and today I have the privilege of speaking to Pierre Jordan, who's not only the trail manager at Otter and avid EasyEquities client, but is his hand in many other things. Thanks, Pierre. Thanks for taking the time out to chat to us today. It's a privilege to have you on the channel.
Thanks so much, Sean. It's always cool to chat to like athletes, investors, and just people that have the same outlook on life than me. So yeah, great to be here.
Awesome, and I'm looking forward to what we're going to chat about. And the reason we're here is obviously because EasyEquities sponsors the Otter African Trail Race, and it's a beautiful trail race that's known for its 42-kilometer route that goes to the Tsitsikamma Forest from Storms River to Nature's Valley. But if you're running it backwards from Nature's Valley to Storms River, it's also known as the Grail of Trail. It's beautiful, majestic. You can throw out all the words you want to. It's absolutely special. Special to us, EasyEquities, special to me, also in my heart. And it's become my absolute favorite place in South Africa from running it from the last few years. Here at Easy, we love our partnership with the Otter team. Not only is the team amazing people, but we've been involved for this year when Otter kicks off in October. It'll be our 4th year we're involved. And it's really special to us because at the heart of what we do at EasyEquities is to empower people to be able to live their dreams and make the best of their lives. And our partnership with Otter allows us to do this. So yeah, it's really special. And the reason I'm actually chatting to Pierre here today is I was lucky enough to join Pierre and the team on the Otter Recce a few weeks ago. Pierre was taking these route marshals through the event, and we'll hear from him why. Because I mean, it's really interesting, Pierre, how I'm really interested also to hear how you guys actually organize the race with only a few entry and exit points, how the whole thing works. So yeah, just to dive into it. Thanks again, Pierre. How did you get into being the trail manager at Otter, and just a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so for me, it all started like where I started running. Like I've always played the traditional, I guess, school sports, like I was on Paul gym, and so it was big rugby and all that kind of stuff. Went to England to coach and play rugby there, and then luckily, yeah, there I kind of got out of it completely, and then I got into trail running because I guess I've always had a need for, I don't know, exploring, not just exploring nature, but exploring myself and my own limits, I guess. And for me, there was a perfect entry point to get involved with Otter. So I was back in Port Alfred. I was at 43 Flying School, and the guy that used to do Chris Crutzen, he used to do the role that I'm fulfilling now. That was his role back then in 2012. And his daughter was at the air school with us. So through meeting her, starting running with her, about 5 of us got involved in being field marshals for Otter because Chris loved having pilots there because we could all talk on radios. We were all on time. We were quite specifically, we were very highly strung people. You have to be very specific as a pilot. So I guess you could be trusted, and that's all you want. So we started working as field crew, as marshals, basically in the field. So we'll man the stations, we'll do the route marking, and that's where these recce scout runs also started. So because it's so important to, if I'm speaking to the marshal at Andre Hut or at Gugu Hut and something's happened, I just need to tell them, go to E1 or go here. They need to know what I'm talking about. That's why the recce runs are so important, because when we do the run, we don't just run from point A to B. We discuss the points where it can happen. They swim through blowcrants themselves. They know that anxiety, that anticipation that the athletes have. And they also know like in what frame of mind the athlete is when they've been on their feet for 10 hours. You're a very different person when you've been running for 10 hours versus been running for, having a nice cup of coffee in Nature's Valley. So it's very important for me for the field to also have that sense of empathy with the athletes. And that's what really sets Otter apart, I think, is the amount of effort that gets put into preparing the crew to be able to work with the athletes that come and provide them the best experience possible. And from a safety point of view, it's just absolutely paramount that every field crew member knows what's happening out on the trail. So that's kind of where I got involved with that, and I worked on the event from like 2012 to 2016. After which I explored my own trail running a bit more. I met my partner Nicolette, who's quite a decent trail runner. So then I started becoming a bit more competitive and trained a bit more. So I then didn't work on events as much. I guess I wanted to explore my own running a bit more. And I also discovered the Drakensberg then, so I got a bit obsessed as usual. But then in 2020, actually with the COVID year, there was entries available. So Nicolette entry as a surprise, and I raced the event that year. And then I was going to race it again because I really wanted to improve on my time and see if I can specific time in mind that I would love to have gone.
So Pierre, you spoke about there, you mentioned like E1 and Andre Hut and Blokran. So maybe you can just talk a little bit through the route there and explain what you mean by those things for people that don't know what the Otter is.
Yeah, so the Otter obviously is traditionally a hiking route that gets hiked in 5 days. So you have the 4 overnight huts. So if you start from Storms Riverside, because traditionally it's hiked from Storms River to Nature's Valley. And it's like, yeah, it's like you said earlier, it's probably the most pristine trail in South Africa. It's just like 100% single track. It's absolutely magnificent. And you have these overnight huts, which is now in the race formed checkpoints, where we have marshals and safety crew. So the first one will be in Gugu Hut. Then we'll go over to Scott Hut, then Oakhurst. We'll cross Blokran's, and then you have Andre Hut at the end, and then Nature's Valley. This year being the Reto, we run it in the opposite direction. So every year the race gets alternated. So it's Otter, and then obviously Otter, the word flipped around is Reto. So that's some John Collins ingenuity there. No, they used to call it the Reto when they were running it kind of, before the race started, they were running it illegally, and they called it the Reto whenever they were talking about it. So that's, I think, where that started. But so basically, we position our crew there, and then we have various escape routes from which we can enter the route, because like Otter is probably one of the most, it's just really remote actually. Like you think it's very easy to get onto the trail, but it's also, once you are on the trail, it's really difficult to move. If someone is 3 km away, it can take you an hour to get there. Firstly, you have to get to the closest emergency point, and then from there you have to then move along the trail. There's no like, you can't just drive there, or there's no Jeep track that just takes you there easily. So that's why we do identify certain emergency points where we'll enter and exit, and we've marked them on the route. So if a competitor's always, also passes a certain point, then there's a sign that says this is that emergency point, and then they could tell us they're there, we can go extract them, basically.
And that builds into, I mean, you touched on earlier about the importance of your crew and trusting your crew, and I'm sure that builds into like making sure like when your crew says something or what's happening, you know exactly everything that's going on.
Yeah, so what we do is also we have like waterproof kind of route maps with all the coordinates on it, with all the emergency points and points where signal is quite good, because communication in any safety environment, communication is key. Like it's actually, if you've got clear and good communication, it's actually not that stressful because you can always talk to each other. It's when those dark zones kind of occur. And the Otter is always tricky because it's so undulating. Signal isn't always great. So we've got look, this year, every year it's getting increased, which is quite good. Like I enjoy that. Like that's one thing like Faces also is taken very seriously, is investing in technology that can assist us in communicating better. So from radio points to repeaters and boosters, and getting the cell phone signals enhanced. So via radio, car radios, and WhatsApp, we actually have a great sense of communication. And this year we'll have an enhanced tracking and electronic tracking on the at the various CPs. So because it's a big thing always to know, if 200 runners pass Andre Hut, I want 200 runners to pass, Blokran or Oakhurst. Otherwise, if there's someone missing, I need to go look for them. And now we usually only did it manually, so I had 2 people doing it manually, so ensuring our numbers are there. But now this year we'll also have tracking systems, and that will help us with that.
That's incredible. That's really cool, and yeah, I'm sure it helps a lot. Because how many field marshals do you have on route and doctors to make sure that everything does run smoothly?
So in my team, from a field marshal point of view alone, I've got 12. But that's excluding the river safety team with, Rowan and Noah, who are rope experts and swift water experts. Then they've got 4 lifesavers under them as well. So that's that. Then we've got the full medic. We've got a full medic, external third-party medical team with proper like doctors and things on board. And we've got 2 running doctors that I'll keep in the car with me that I can send out on the trail. And then we've got NSRI guys as well at the rivers, because last year we had very high waters So some of the rivers that were never an issue for anyone last year was like chest height to cross. So we just deemed that like because we couldn't put a rope across it because there's no real point for the rope to be nice and tall. It's unsafe because you also don't want to just add things for the sake of adding. That can cause more complications. So we then got some NSRI crew and positioned them on the river. So it is quite a yeah, but definitely from a crew point of view, it's very intensive, but it's a standard we set because I've done certain events that I just won't do again in this country because as I'm running, I'm analyzing kind of like, is this natural for me to analyze if something happened here to me, how would they get me?
Yeah.
What processes do they have in place? And then you start chatting to the race organizers and you realize that they literally have an ambulance at the start finish. They have nothing else. And I'm just going, you're playing with people's lives out there. You need to take it seriously. And that's why I'm so proud to be involved with a race like Otter because organizers take the athlete's safety and experience very seriously.
And it's something I've also, I mean, I'm obviously not been involved in the race management, but I've noted every year is how many marshals there are, and in the water areas of the safeties there also. I mean, that's part of the reason why I love Otter. There's the terrain is you go through everything, from boulders to swimming to, but it must make it a little bit complicated for you guys to make sure that everything runs smoothly and that all of us athletes, like you mentioned, when we're heading on that route for 10 hours, are still focusing on making it across the line.
Now it is that thing. Also, like last year was probably the wettest year I've ever seen there, and everyone thinks, oh, now the safety is going to be so difficult. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Yeah, we have our processes in place, and that's why we have it in place. The years I'm actually the most stressed is the perfect weather years because that's where the athletes really take the risks. That's where they push themselves way past. Because if it's cold and they're more, they're not they're less reluctant. More reluctant to run as hard, or they can eat better, they can drink better. Dehydration is not just such a big issue. So it's more like they'll maybe slip and do an ankle, but then it's, you put warm clothes on and we come get you and it's fine. But it's when it's really hot out there, they're getting like, it was 25, 30 degrees in those forests can get very hot actually. And you're racing hard because weather is good, and then dehydration kicks in, and that's where things gets really actually very tricky. So it's always those perfect years where people think, I guess complacency kicks in. And that's where I start getting really like, on edge a bit.
Athletes who like to push the limits sometimes. So everyone, when they're in the event, they think they're a real athlete and they're a racer. They push the limit.
Yeah, that's why I always joke. We have way more issues on the race than on the challenge. Although the challenge is much longer, the challenge is usually, people go and they have on the race, like you have people like really pushing themselves hard, and it's it's just, I guess it's in the environment we operate in, it's the mindsets we go into.
One of my next questions I was going to actually ask is, which is more challenging from your perspective, the race or the challenge? And just for everyone watching this, the challenge is run 2 days before the race, and it's exactly the same course, and it's 11-hour cutoff, where the race is 2 days later. That's where you have all the elites running, and it's a 9-hour cutoff. So it's a little bit, you have to go a little bit faster over the terrain.
Yeah, so I guess the challenge is the challenge of the challenges. We need to know that because that's obviously our first, everything is together. So now that's usually, okay, are the route markers very clear? All those things, is it in place? The tracking, is it working properly? So there's more stress from that point of view. But I'll say the race from a what can go wrong point of, or what goes wrong point of view is a bit more intense because, like I say, the athletes, they are pushing themselves harder. They are like, they're really going flat out at it. So that sometimes I do find we have more severe cases of dehydration, etc. But look, both has the same risks of exposed. We've always joked about the challenge usually has the worst weather. It's sometimes it always rains for some reason on the challenge, and then the race has the most perfect weather. But like last year, it was just very wet for both.
I remember slipping all over the place, and I actually couldn't believe that the pros went almost as fast as they normally go in the mud. Like, it blew my mind that the technical ability of the top end guys is absolutely insane. I mean,
yeah, I guess, well, Robbie Simpson is from Scotland, so it's like standard operating conditions for him.
And Pierre, we haven't actually touched on that. I mean, you mentioned to me on the record that you ran a 4:30 Otter before. I mean, that is absolutely insane and seriously impressive.
Look, that was just a really good day out, I guess, and it's because I had so many like really positive experiences of Otter in my life before. I used to work on it for like 4 or 5 years, and I've had these recce runs, and we'd have that whole trail to ourselves, and where in life can you have that? And now you have the ability to run it yourself and race it yourself, and like every time things got really tough, I just found myself like smiling because I'm like, hey, you're on the Otter, running with no stress, no like responsibility. Because usually I go on the trail, so like now when I did the recce run, you know, swimming, everyone, the crew, I was responsible for everyone going through blow grants, and it's a lot stressful. And when you get to race it, you kind of go, it's so selfish almost. It's like you just like run across. So every time it got really hard, I was just like, hey, you're privileged to be here, run harder.
That's a great point, though, because that's exactly it. We're privileged to be able to be on that trail and enjoy it. So that's a really good point. Pierre, you touched on just now, I also wanted to circle back to it as you spoke about the organizers, while it's organized by faces and initially set up by, when you called it the Reto, and John and Mark were running it illegally. So I don't know if you can just touch on how everything works on the organizational side as well.
Yeah, so I guess it was started by the Collins brothers and Magnetic South, uh, and they ran the event for a while. And it really became I guess, the golden standard for trail racing in this country. And I think it still is, and it's just elevating even further now that Faces has got involved. Like with every good thing, I guess you can't just keep doing the same thing every year. Everything evolves, and people also come back every year, and they maybe need a different experience. I think Faces has done a good transition there where almost without trying to change everything up, they've made subtle changes that has actually been great. And, when I worked about 2 years ago, they asked me, or I got asked to kind of fulfill the role that I'm doing now. And that year, the team was it was yeah, there wasn't much of a team effort because we weren't too sure what happened. And I spoke up to Faces about it, and all of a sudden they say, okay, cool, let's do a full team weekend. And this is why this crew weekend happened now, where we all got to meet each other. I got to meet you, I got to meet, and it's important. We need to know who's the sponsors that's involved, what's their role in it, because a lot of times sponsors can put pressure on you to do certain things you might not want to do. But it's so nice to see the people behind it to build those relationships. And I think from that point of view, Faces has had a good influence on the event. And I think last year was probably one of the best events like we've put up so far. So this year I'm really excited to see, what further going to be, improvements basically further on.
Yeah, no, thanks, Ben. For us, it's also about the people, the amazing people between the Collins family and Faces. So just to be involved with people like that always helps from a sponsorship perspective as well.
Uh,
And I'm glad we don't put too much pressure on you to do an amazing job. So we're going to keep you rolling with it. Yeah, the other thing I wanted to chat to you, and it's something we touched base on the rec is obviously the Otter is a pristine race and it's got an eco-green principle. So I know that there's only one water point as such in the middle of it, but how do you keep the trail clean? And how do you set up for the trail before the challenge and take down everything to make sure that when the hikers come through afterwards, that there's nothing there? Also, maybe touching on the hikers in the week as well, please.
yeah, so basically, Otter is actually very special in that way. Like on the Sunday, we usually do so after the race, we'll try to get all the markers off because obviously when we hand the trail over to Sandbox, we want to make sure there's no trace of us on the trail. So the field marshals, when the race passes on Saturday, they stay out on the field still on Saturday and clean everything up. And then on the Sunday, we'll go back onto the trail just to make sure. So we'll either run it from point to point or we'll go certain places in. Like last year, the weather wasn't great and Blokrands was not very safe. So I didn't go because otherwise, now I'm going myself across there. And the last thing I want to do is call out the safety crew to come rescue me. So, but traditionally, if we can, we want to do the whole run on the Sunday as well, and just to make sure there's no marked trail stuff on there. Look, maybe we pick up one or two little, the top of a gel packet or something that fell. But traditionally, I think when athletes join Otter, they already, I think they can feel it's such a pristine environment, it's such a clean environment. And usually, if you look at the psychology of people, if it's a dirty environment, they don't mind messing. If it's a clean environment, they won't mess. And that is actually, I see that on Otter. Like there's no rubbish really afterwards on the race, and I'm very, it's amazing to see athletes being cognizant of it. And also we control that the numbers are limited, so it's limited to 300 athletes per event. So you don't have masses going through there dirtying things. So we try to pick up where we can, but the athletes in general, you have to applaud them. They really respect the pristine nature of that trail.
You raised such an interesting point about the human mind. Like you go and run some of these road races, and there's just water things everywhere. Oaks don't care, and then you run like Otter, and everyone just keeps the rubbish with them, and you wish people would just do that all the time, no matter if it's in a beautiful place like Otter or running down Jan Smuts. Stuff like that.
It's a big. It's the only place where we do sometimes have a few issues. It's like blowgrounds, the blowground swim. Like a lot of people, but that's just because they forget or they don't think of it. But anything that's not in a zipped pouch will pop out. So don't put your rain jacket. I know Kane Riley, I think, got a time penalty 1 year because he had his waterproof in his like the mesh, and it popped out in blowgrounds. And they found it, but he was at the finish line and got a time penalty because he didn't have all the kits on him. So we do try to treat everyone the same, firstly from a safety point of view, and then secondly, do try to stash all your belongings in zippered pouches before you cross blowgrounds because it might get washed out there. So yeah, that's the one key part there.
And Pierre, just to circle back to the markers and that, how long does it take you guys to set them up? Because I mean, running the recce with you guys the other day, obviously there are no markers, and I'll rock up there in 3 weeks' time, and there's all these beautiful markers showing you which way to go.
So look, to be honest, if I had my way, there would be not a single marker on the route because it's a hiking trail, like it's made to hike. It's very like straightforward. But obviously, when you put one marker on the moment you put one marker on the trail, you're responsible for everyone's, safety and all that they don't get lost basically. So we do try to at every emergency point put an emergency point that identifies it, because the last thing you want someone is to stand at some random steps going up into a plantation and they don't know where they are. So at least they can tell you, hey, there's a sign that says, E6, this is where I am. So then I immediately know where to go. And then at Andre Hut and those places, we'll put water signs up just so that athletes can fill up water where they need to fill up. And then the markers, usually we use golden bunting. So just lint to tie to trees. And then I do have arrow markers that we put up. And basically we take a whole day and we go the day before. Because I don't believe in going a week before or 3 days before, because there's baboons, there's wildlife, and the weather on the coast is brutal. So if it's any feather banners, the crew actually go the morning of the race and they'll go run to the point to go make sure it's still up. Like I've got very dedicated crew. Like I've had Vian from Gubu last year at 3 o'clock in the morning. I had him messaging me saying, yeah, just to confirm, the markers are still up. One point that I was worried about. And that is why I'm so proud of working with a crew like this, because they're so dedicated. It's like that passion of being out there working hard when no one asked him to do it, no one knows he did it. I just saw no one got lost, and that's all I care about at the end of the day. So yeah, they put all the markers up the day before, and then the day before the race they'll go run the trail again and go see it. So I've broken them up into various spots. So the Andre crew will do Nature's Valley to Blowgrounds, so they'll manage that section. The Oakers guys will do Oakers to the Blowgrounds, and also a little bit on towards Scott's side, and the Scots is from E3 to to a certain point between that and Oakhurst, and then in the Gubu guys E3 to the finish. So it's basically pairs split up, route marking, everything.
That's I mean, talking about the story about Vian there. I also was fortunate enough to meet on the recce there. But that's what makes it so special. I mean, as a runner, you rock up on the day, it's an amazing experience, but you don't know what's going on behind the scenes and what the guys do to make sure that the route is like perfect for you on that day. Well, obviously weather dependent, but otherwise like perfect for you to just rock up and push yourself to the limit. So no, thank you. We appreciate it as the runners.
Yeah, look, there'll always be some mistakes. Like that's why I worked on the event for like I think 4 to 5 years, and my last year I actually, because every year I worked on it, I guess I got more like complacent, because I'm like, why would anyone go missing here, or why would anyone, so I started marking more sparsely, and then actually runners did go off track, and I literally just saw that as I'm not marking anymore as a point of view from someone the first time on the trail. I've now done this trail about 10 times, so I think it's straightforward. So that's a thing we do try to bring in the recce runs, and that was so nice this year to have had people on the recce run that has never done the trail before, because I can see this I can see how they react. They'll go where I think it's obvious. They'll start and go, hey Pierre, which way here? And I go, note this down quick, brief my crew, guys, this spot is a hot spot, we need to mark it properly, because say this guy that's never been on it, they couldn't see the trail clearly. And then also with sandbox, we do try to work with them very well. So there was a few trees that fell over the storms, so I jot down the location of all of that, send them photos, send them coordinates, and they go in and they clear it. So we try to make it like a symbiotic relationship where we help them from a point of view where, like, hey, here's hotspots or danger areas, can you maybe go work there? And they obviously increase the safety and the quality of their trail, and they've been very, very good with that. Every year, like, yeah, they're quite good with that, and that's a very good relationship we have with Marco. That's our safety officer. Also, he used to be a sandbox ranger, so when I worked on it, I remember him running it as a sandbox ranger. Yeah, he was a good runner. And now to have him part of it, because he grew up on that trail, he knows that trail so well. And it's amazing to have his knowledge and experience as part of the safety operations.
I suppose that's one of the most important relationships with others, having sandbox on board and making sure that they're happy and loving the fact that everyone's involved.
Definitely.
So you touched on your run for 4:30 a while ago, but wasn't it Nicolette that was keeping you fit and running to make sure that you were able to run 4:30? I mean, I know that she's also a fantastic runner, and I think you mentioned to me that she's got the record at Skara.
She's got the South African female record. There was a Dutch lady that beat her record. But yeah, no, I always laugh at Nick's because, look, I didn't do a 4:30. I would love to run a 4:30 Otter. I did like a 4:48, I think. But Nicolette was quite grumpy with me because, like, she's run Otter, I think, like 8 times, and she's podiumed like almost every time, but she's never won. And she's never gone sub 5. She ran 5 hours and 18 seconds the one year. So she was quite grumpy with me, like showing up, not planning to race the race, and then getting a decent time. But look, to Nicolette's defense, I've yet to beat her on like 100-mile distance. Like, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Like, she's quite, when it gets to like anything longer than 100 Ks, like, she's got her ability to be consistent is kind of, I guess, what it is. She finishes as fast as she starts. And that's, I guess, I've learned a lot from that.
Key for an athlete. That's cool. Power couple. Yeah, I know you're also an avid EasyEquities client. So how did you get involved? And please just tell me a little bit about why you love. You told me you love EasyEquities.
Yeah, look, EasyEquities changed my life, eh? It's really it's really cool. So it's basically my previous pre-COVID, I was a pilot, and I guess you're always then going to be quite on the radar of financial advisors. And had this, like, he was a pilot and he's also a financial advisor. And the company I was flying for was a big listed company like at AVI. So they had a provident fund for you and everything. So that was like with Alexander Forbes. And then you have the financial advisor that's here. And basically, you have no control. You don't really know what's going on there. And the way I also grew up was very much, you do your work and you hand over your whatever savings to some person that's supposed to, make it work for you. But I really struggle with the concept of not knowing what's happening back there. And I want to be involved with anything that I prioritize. I want to be involved. And that's what EasyEquities has just provided. We discovered old Simon Brown on on podcasts, literally listened to everything he's ever put out. And me and Nicolette, like, she once asked me, like, how much you save per month? And I told her, like, well, unless I want to buy climbing gear or running gear, I don't really save. Like, I don't spend much, so I can always save quite quickly because I don't like spending. I'm quite frugal. But I realized, like, I don't save anything, and I didn't want to, like, save more because I'm handing my savings over to someone else. And then I started digging into the fees that they charge, and they couldn't explain, like, they'll take a performance fee if they do well, but if they don't do well, they won't pay a fee back. It's like, to me, it doesn't make sense. So with EasyEquities, it was just like I could take my money and put it in there. I had a emergency fund in place, and I then started investing. And I just, in the beginning, I didn't really know what to buy, so I just bought. I think it was back then, it was the Ashburton 1200. I just bought an ETF, and I still own that same ETF now. And you can see how well that is done in a consistent period. Because I think I've been investing now for 5 years and 9 months. I saw the other day on the new the Easy 3.0 gives you a very nice view of your. Finally, I get that whole nice view that just gives you a much more like overview of your own performance, or and I just apply the same principles that I apply with running. It's like you have to be committed, you have to be consistent, and you have to enjoy it. And I think having a vested interest in doing it yourself um, increases the enjoyment of it. So with Easy, I've even had a very close family friend who they paid like exorbitant fees every time they wanted to access money, because every time they access money, the financial advisor charged them quite a bit. And I just said, like, you could just go with EasyEquities, because at least know you're paying 0.25 or whatever on a transaction fee, and you also know what's happening there. You're more reluctant to take money out if you're doing it yourself. You're not just sending an email and then things happen in the background.
Yeah.
You're doing it yourself, so you are directly responsible for the consequences. That also means you directly responsible for your own rewards, and for me, that just makes sense. So now I've been trying to, like, share the the easy investing kind of thing a lot, because I feel it's really cool to have that in South Africa, where it's such it's such an industry that you don't there's the transparency isn't great, and now there's a way just to be more transparent. And yeah, I really enjoy it.
And I mean, that's what to me also easy about is making sure that everyone is accessible, is transparent, and trying to get everyone to understand why it's important to invest. Before you spoke about easy, you spoke about why you probably won't beat Nicolette on 100K because she's so committed and she's like stays the like course and is got the staying power. And to me, it's just the same thing with investing. We commit the staying power like with your Ashburton 120. So I thought that was a cool
Yeah,
story.
it's interesting because I can remember my first, because you obviously, as an investor, like dividends becomes a very like a cool thing, because
Yeah.
firstly I didn't even know what dividends were, and now you're getting these dividends, and then you start researching it and seeing what it is about. But I know it's probably, there's a lot of financial people that will now say, yeah, whatever, but my first dividend payment from my whole portfolio for the whole year, 5, 6, call it 6 years ago, was less than my smallest holdings dividend payment this year for one quarter. And it's just like, that's just, how it grows. If you just, and I've never taken any money out of my investment account. That was my big thing. Like, even through retrenchment, like I saw that as that was my main objective. Is, I would say, with running as well, if have my A goal, okay, maybe podium or win the race. But that might not happen. It's not that much in your control, because if the 10 best runners in the country shows up, well, I'm not going to win. But what I can control then otherwise is how I regulate myself, how I train. And then I say, okay, cool, this is maybe where I want to be. But then also, if I have an injury, I can't put the same, expectations on myself. I have to now readjust. And that's kind of what happened for me when I got retrenched. So now you in aviation, you get retrenched, the whole industry is shut down. I can't even go look for a job. And so I tell you, like, really think about things. And luckily there, I've had a really big, like, kind of emergency fund, because I was saving to buy a car. And then luckily, I decided my Yaris is still good enough, so I didn't buy a car. And then I had a decent emergency fund. And also, because you don't spend as much, because I'm not driving to work every day anymore. I'm not doing those things, and you do start to lean up, because I don't really have, I don't come from family that I can just fall back on, kind of, let's put it that way. So it's like, it's a thing of, no one really cares, and you are responsible for yourself. And that was nice there to have. I don't have to ask anyone to pay out some of my money for me or any of that. And I could really decide, okay, cool. My main objective is to not touch any of my investments. And I actually that year still managed to top up my tax-free savings account. So that was for me a really big thing, because I had to start a new business, obviously. So I started guiding people and coaching and just doing what I could do to, like, make some income still. And that's how Mountain Abandon, our business, then started, was basically just through that. And now, like, it's 4 years later, and I still haven't had to sit in a cockpit again, which I'm very happy about. But yeah, for me, EasyEquities has just been that catalyst of it's yeah, opened a whole new world to me, basically, because it's a world I was very closed to just because I didn't understand it. And now there's a platform that and the educational stuff on it as well. It's explain to you what dividends is,
Yeah, yeah. No, that's amazing, Ben. I love it when people speak about like things that are in their control and not, and taking ownership of what you can control to make yourself the best you can be, and then out of your control, you just try and deal with as it comes. Just to touch on please explain to us more about your business and what you do as well, because I mean that's obviously what's keeping you being able to be a trail nest.
I joked that like started growing my hair, and I'm like, sometimes I really want to cut my hair because I'm not the like, long hair has not always been the biggest thing for me, but for me it still kind of just represents like I can't be a pilot if I've got long hair because it's not accepted in the pilot industry. So for me it's always like a bit of a rebellion thing still. No, I'm joking, but I've thought about going back to flying quite a bit because I miss the risk assessment type of stuff, the threat and error management. I don't miss the roboticness of it. Like there's no room for lateral thinking, or there's no room for creativity. Basically, you have to follow procedures, and for very good reason. Um, but then starting my own business, what I loved about it is basically just you're living a life of consequence. Um, when I was flying, I got my salary every month, and there was going to be food in the fridge, there was going to be fuel in my car, to drive. It was very predictable. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I just say, like, for me personally, I struggled with that because I became very frustrated in life. And then starting a business was kind of like, firstly, like no one cares if you get out of bed, only, you need to get out of bed and get stuff done. And some days you really don't want to because you don't know where you're going to find, clients, or I wanted to be the most authentic version of myself as well. And I came up kind of with a business model of like independence over dependence, just because I realized there were so many, say, take the financial advisor kind of industry again. They made you dependent on them. And sometimes they even hid certain fees or things. And they always made you feel like they are doing something that you cannot do. Now, I could probably not invest my money as well as a, financial advisor, but I can control at least the fees and those things. And then if you listen to like you read Bogle and those guys, it is like biggest predictor of future performance is fees, like have a lower fees and you might perform better. So it's a lot of these kind of stuff that came in. And so for me with Mountain Abandon, I tried to like take athletes, because it all started just with athletes wanted to prepare for trail races that goes through the night. I said like Sky Run, that's like probably my all-time favorite race from a personal point of view to race, just because there's no trail markers, it's just wilderness, like you have to carry so much to look after yourself. And it is that you have to go be independent in the mountain, because you're going to have to rescue yourself if something goes wrong, probably. So there, I really wanted to teach athletes that and share everything. Like I know, I want to share freely. I don't want to, because I always despise it when I talk to someone and I feel they're withholding something from me in order for them to get me to come back and pay more and consult another time. I'm like, no, just share everything you know with me. Don't tell me. I once asked a question in a course I was doing, and they said, oh, that's above the scope of this course. I'm like, well, I feel my experience is above the scope of this course, but yes, here I am. We've got the time, so share with me. And I just want to avoid that. When I have athletes that ask me questions, like I almost tell them, like the objective of our relationship is for you to terminate coaching at some point, because I want to taught you everything there is to know, and you'll then probably choose maybe to work with me still, because now we going from if you like to look at pilots as well, sometimes there's a cockpit gradient. We have a very experienced captain and a very inexperienced first officer, but the objective is that for that captain to teach that first officer to get that cockpit gradient more, because now your team will work together in a better way. So that's what I try to do with athletes as well. And it goes from in the beginning, it's me teaching them a lot of things, and then eventually it just becomes I'm a sounding board for them, and we're bouncing ideas off each other to decide what can be best in the bigger picture. So it is that creating a lifelong sustainable way of living. Um, so yeah, that's quite nice from that point of view, and that's why it's nice to have Nicolette, because I can be very idea orientated and very philosophical about things, and she's very much more detail orientated and more realistic. So I'll have these dreams that I come up with and ideas, but I might not action it. Quite often I might not action it, but she'll listen to what I'm saying, and then she'll go, "Hey, that thing you said, we need to do it," and then it happens, So that is also important. Like, who do you align yourself with in life? Who's your partner? Who's your business partner? Who's your clients that you work with? I think it's important that you also work with clients that enhances your life. Are they giving you valuable feedback? Are they pushing you to be better? And a lot of my athletes, they inspire me. So I then go out and try to be better just because of them.
Yeah, I love how you ended that, but always trying to be better and associate your people with people that will make you move forward, not stay stagnant or go backwards. And it's so important. It's something that also we worked on when we were back in the day when we were rowing, just to make sure if you want to go faster, be around faster people that have the right mindset. Don't be around people that just want to socialize.
Yeah, like it's really important to associate with people that you believe kind of not view the world in the same way, but has the same values. Because I think it's very valuable to have disagreements. Like, I try to have a conversation with someone I disagree with once or twice a week, just because I know I learn a lot about myself. Because I'm like, why is that thing that that person said triggering me? Why is it sitting uncomfortably with me? Because otherwise we live in a um, confirmation biased world. If all of us agree on the same investment, well, we're all going to get tanked when the market falls. But if we 4 or 5 different minds, we might learn something from each other. Then we might have a more balanced or more diversified investment account. So that's always why I try to listen to, not just Simon Brown, but also other commentators. Yeah, or read books, because otherwise it becomes a lot of noise. So it's always interesting, and preparing for like a lot of these random events that happen. Like, busy with Nassim Taleb's Black Swan moment, and like I saw my retrenchment as like a Black Swan event, and like, how do you kind of prepare yourself for that? And same with Otter, you know, we prepare for that one thing that might happen once in a decade. But when it happens, we know we're prepared, and that night I'm going to be able to sleep with a clean conscience, because I know I've basically over prepared. And a lot of people can get a bit tired of myself and Marco talking about safety things, because we we will not dream up the worst case scenario, but yeah, we know what can happen out there. Um, so we always try to prepare for that, basically.
Control what you can inside of it.
Yeah,
Thanks, Pierre. I think if we don't stop now, we never can stop.
yeah. Look, I'll be able to tie everything together back to ultra running at the end of the day, because it's such a good thing for life. And no, it is, and that's where it's taught me about life, relationships, work, investing, and the
But,
same for
but
investing. I've learned so much, and apply that to life. So that's why it is just such a fascinating topic to discuss.
so that's it, because everything is interlinked, and that's again, it circles back to the start of why we sponsor the Otter and we believe in it as well, because everything is interlinked and it's about what you believe in.
Yeah, no, it's
But
brilliant.
but thanks, Pierre. Thanks so much for the time today, and thanks for sharing your insights, and good luck for what's it now, 3 weeks time.
Mm.
Hopefully we don't have mad luck we had last year, but looking forward to
Yeah, look,
it.
it's so far it's been much drier. I know the Cape has had a lot of rain, but the garden route actually is much drier than it was last year. So I spoke to some of the guys, the farmers that own the plantations and stuff, and they track the water, the rain quite accurately. So yeah, I think it hopefully might be a bit drier this year. You never know with Archer.
Also, that's part of it, though. That's what makes it special. You don't want something that's consistent either. Well, you do in part of your mind, but not always.
No, like, your training should be consistent. The
Yes.
environment, the environment you go into can never be controlled and can never be consistent. So that's the key. Like, control what you can control and do your best on the day.
No, thanks, Pierre. Thanks again, and thanks for the time. Like I said, looking forward to seeing you down there early next month.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Thanks, Sean.